Hello everybody, welcome back to Let's Play Hearts of Iron 4 New Order as Yunnan. Let us continue on from where we last left off. So, things in Yunnan are kind of a little bit messy. The NPA is getting a little bit ticked off that things are taking as long as they have. So they are contacting the old governor of Yunnan, Long Hun, to see if maybe, just maybe, he wants to do a little bit of a rebellion. Okay, so aside from that, Germany's invaded the UK, Russia is slowly kind of organizing themselves, and Long Yun visits home. The woman was plowing the field with one hand. Alone she worked, trudging through the mud with her hoe, while a stump hung from her left arm uselessly. Behind her were 3 small children, each covered in dirt and filthy water, planting seeds in her wake. When he asked, she said that the harvest demands were so great that even if the rains were good, she would probably have to work day and night to plant another field. Bought with money borrowed at exorbitant interest rates. She looked sadly at the oldest child. Perhaps, he walked on. The houses that had once been filled with life and playmates were now all empty. Most are rotting, their male inhabitants either dead or hundreds of meters below his feet toiling away in the mines. When he asked where the children were, the old woman who ran the lone tea shop still standing said they were with the men, one way or another. He walked on. Village headman was the only one left in the administration building. When he saw who had entered the building, he immediately stood up, but was bade to sit back down again. When he heard the question that was asked, he began sputtering and asking 100 things at once, but was bade to wait and clear his mind. His visitor had enough time to hear the truth. Finally, the headman spoke one sentence. Luhan. These were all his orders. The all-consuming, apologetic fury threatened to overcome Long Yun at an instant itself. The unworthy dog, the damn traitor. There was clearly no hope left with that man now. Now I will do it myself. I will walk away and no longer. So Luhan is absolutely 100% getting cooed. That is an inevitability at this point. But I do think we have some more mines we can open to maybe exploit a handful more children. Okay, we can't do all of these now. So let's expand some steel. Invest. Now we don't have any more infantry equipment. All right, do we need infantry equipment because we're forcing people at gunpoint to go to the mines and to the factories? That would actually, that's my guess. Modern farming techniques. And every inch surveyed. Sitting in his office, looking at the maps on the wall and the ledger stacked high upon his desk, the minister observed with great satisfaction the evidence of advancement presented to him. Arable land usage was, after near Herculean effort, decreasing at an ever-accelerating pace. Many had said it could not be done, that the males in its countryside of Yunnan would always often scout agricultural bounty, even if the exact opposite was true of its minerals. But new technologies, new techniques, and new efforts had proved them wrong, and the state was seeing its granaries becoming ever more full. The only negative he could see in this expansion were the reports of gradually intensifying banditry, claimed by some to be formed by gangs of displaced peasants. Others, however, suggested, more darkly, that the equipment, the tactics, the discipline, and above all the zeal displayed by those so-called bandits hinted at alternative identities, nationalist, or even worse, communist. The minister refused these characterizations. A short-term eruption of disorder was understandable, given how radically land usage had changed. But an insurgency was not. It could not be so. That would invite too many questions, and too much scrutiny. No, the reports would be clear. They are bandits, and surely of no concern. Okay, we have an extra division. We'll send them over to Red Army for now. I mean, we are getting, I would say, like a fairly decent-sized army. We're up to 13. The words of Master Long. To General Zheng Zisheng and Anampu, greetings. Though, to the eyes of my cousin, Luhan, I may seem blissfully unaware of any conspiracies taking place behind the scenes. I am, in fact, fully cognizant of your plans against him. You should not be surprised. I did not become Marshal of the Southwest and King of Yunnan by sitting around and doing nothing with a stupid smile on my face. I am aware of the way in which the battle lines have been drawn, and I am fully willing to side with the National Protection Army to free the motherland. What Luhan or Guao Zhangwu might call revanche is madness, I call reassertion of our nation's great ancestral right unjustly usurped from it. However, I must make one simple request. Whatever you do, I must insist that you spare our thoughts for my cousin in his old age. Whereas collaboration is indeed beneath contempt, blood remains thicker than water, and I must not allow my relatives to be slaughtered on my watch, no matter what they have done. It is to express my wish that when we of the NPA take power, Lu Han should be imprisoned, but not harmed. I hope that you'll be able to meet the requirements of mine. Signed, Long Yun, Vice Governor of Yunnan. End of the South African War. It looks like South Africa did lose, or maybe they didn't lose like 100%, but they definitely are on the losing side. So, I mean, this is like 2 back-to-back failures for the United States, right? Like, how are they standing now in the Cold War? I think they've lost like 400 points recently. Channel Crisis minus 200, South Africa minus 150. That's a pretty big swing. Germany has actually been having victory after victory. They've actually not lost one fight. America has won in Malaysia against the Japanese, but I think Germany is very soon becoming the #1 world power. The warlords visit. Zhang Zisheng and Anna Pu had held a gathering with a host of colleagues who, as it turned out, were mostly revanchist members of the NPA and the Yunnan army. Though on paper, as far as Yunnan's intelligence establishment knew, this was just Zhang and An arranging a celebration for the Octagian's lungs' continued health. It was in fact a meeting of people who had thought themselves mostly alone beforehand. It turned out, much to all the officers' surprise, that Lu Han's blind devotion to Gao Zhiguo's modernization program had drawn more enemies from any one of the officers had in his entire lifetime. Expressions such as, "You hate him, I hate him too," were quite common. In Zhang's hand was a letter from Long Yun, indicating his willingness to join the NPA. He was about to pass it around when Long himself appeared at the door. After he was ushered in, Long sat down into the chair that Zhang had gotten hold of for him and spoke briefly. "You gentlemen are aware that I'm on your side from here on in. With one major condition, correct?" "Yes, sir," said one of the officers. "But I'm not sure what this condition is." "I don't think General Zhang got to it before you joined us, sir." Long smiled slightly. "Here's my only condition. When you take my cousin prisoner, do not execute him. Imprison him under decent conditions if he does not resist." The other officers, though at first hesitant, nodded and spoke for all of them. "We can agree to that, Marshal." Long smile widened somewhat. "Very good, gentlemen." He looked around and gestured to a dining table where food was being piled for the men to eat. "Carry on with the gathering then. We can afford to rest a bit. Long Yun has joined the NPA." The room was dimly lit, but it only added to the atmosphere. This was a secret meeting, one which the dogs of the government had no clue was happening. To the somber, flickering glow of the lantern, Long Yun stood in front of the men covered in scars of battle, still wearing their rifles as a mark of the fight that had not ended until every last tenement of the Empire of Japan had been burned from China. "I will ensure that Lu Han's men will not touch one hair of your heads, as long as I remain within your garment. And when the time comes, I will join you, and together we will drive out the pests that infest our motherland together." A sharp clack echoed through the rooms of the NPA. All clicked their heels together and saluted in unison. They found it difficult to breathe as emotions caught in their throats. Finally, he had returned. Finally, the King of Yunnan stood before them. "We will fight to our last breath, and then after that, may the final drop of our blood be shed for the preservation and protection of our motherland." The young Lung watched as the men as they filed out, their shadows dancing against the wall as the flame of the lantern sputtered and jolted. They would be the fire that would burn the locusts out of China. They would be the torch of pine, roaring with anger and righteous indignation. And he would be Atabia, or Adilaba, guiding the torch till his duty had been done and justice restored. And the land would rejoice, and peace and prosperity would come at last. Or so he hoped. Okay. Long Yun will become leader of the Ultranationalist Party. He will get 5% war support, focus on offense, threat receptivity. I don't even know what that actually does. But okay. Let's expand more aluminum. Very, very, very good. We'll focus another point against the CCP. And we even have more production units. Okay, I think for these production units, let's spend them on the military next. I think this seems fairly good. And again, how's the economy doing? 1.6% GDP. I mean, okay, it's gone down a little bit, but overall, I think things are still looking, up for sure. Again, we're not spending much money. Inflation's at 0.6%, which is wild. Though the locust route may be cut, when Zhang Zisheng and Anna Pu heard of the National Protection Army of Yunnan secretly assisted the NRA remnants scattered outside of Yunnan with money, materials, weapons, and the like, it came to no surprise to them. They said as much to the man they called Ji Zhao, but he was deep in thought with a smile on his face. That was because Long Yun was pleasantly surprised. Very much so. In fact, he had not expected this brave resistors, still less of the household names like Song Jilan, Li Mi, Zheng Chong, would still be alive and kicking the Japanese imperialists and their running dogs in the teeth. Even better, it warmed their heart beyond belief to know that neither he nor they were alone. For Zheng and An had told him countless were the brave civilians offering aid and scour to the brave resistance forces, even though the Japanese imperialist bastards had won 2 decades ago. Leaving his reveal, Long looked at the 2 fellow resistance fighters and stood up. It was his turn now to fight for the freedom of the Chinese people and a nation that he and so many loved so deeply. I mean, the rebellion will be happening very, very soon. The insurgencies are going to be acting in just a moment. There's been a military coup in Turkey. Insurgents in Paraguay have been defeated. And martial law in Indonesia. So we're probably going to see another battle in Indonesia. I'm going to assume that Japan's going to win that one as well. Again, like, even when we were playing as the United States, we actually still had a little bit of a difficult time winning in Indonesia because I am bad. But also, Indonesia, it's like a trillion islands. You know, fighting a war there is no simple task. Okay, the British have been defeated. Oh, my children, do they cry? Do they hear their father sigh? Now look abroad to see, now return and weep for me. Well, Britain is dead. That's okay. The National Republic of Britain has been formed. Probably is going to have a lot of repression, like a ton. But we'll see. So is that like even more points for Germany? No, okay. Them just being able to invade is what counts as the victory there. Now, I don't know what would happen if they won the Channel Crisis, but then like still somehow lost to the British infantry. I'm assuming something like that can't actually happen, like realistically. I am mourning in Guangxi. It was mourning in Guangxi, and Chen, by now a veteran operative in the service of the CPC, was far from his home base, among people he did not ordinarily work with. The officers leading the remnant of the National Revolutionary Army in Ji Wei's fiefdom. Obviously, you gentlemen know well how inattentive that traitor Gao and his scum have been. They're so preoccupied with their precious modernizations that they aren't paying Guangxi any attention whatsoever. The NRA officer opposite him nodded shortly. Well, we know all too well. It's how we've maintained our freedom of action of all this time. But what do you want us to do with that, Mr. Chen? Chen nodded. Marshal Yi has sent me to make an offer to you. We propose a new united front against the Japanese imperialists, an alliance between your NRA and our CCP. Since we all want to get rid of the Japanese, we will need to unify with one another, at least until our nation is free once again. It's the only hope that we've got. Either we hang together, sir, or we hang separately. The officer looked at his peers, then they nodded at him. I can agree with that in principle. What are the specifics? Chen smiled, knowing that he had succeeded. Well, sir. So it looks like the Nationalists and the Communists will be forming a united front against the Japanese, and more specifically against Luhan. And I'm sure nothing bad is going to happen to good old Luhan, okay? He's a fighter. He's a champion of the Yunnanese people. They wouldn't turn their back on him. I'm sure of it. Let's go for some more steel. Oh, we have free military factories. Excellent. Is there anything that we need? I mean, I guess we just get more, like, rifles. I think that just seems like the most basic thing we can do right now. Now, we do have a negative 40% production efficiency and negative 23% production efficiency growth, which is not good by any stretch of the imagination. To stand against tyranny. It was several weeks after fleeing the tax collectors that Wei realized that he had become, or what he had become, a bandit. It was not something that he had tried to be, not something he relished or found solace in. It was just simply an unavoidable fact, one that he had accepted with disturbing calmness. Every few days, he and the rest of his newfound allies would find some new estate or traveler to prey on. They would brandish weapons and, in rare cases, use violence to force them to surrender their food and their valuables. Then they would disappear deep into the countryside. It was in the aftermath of one of these raids that Wei and his band heard the screaming coming from some village, a place that his allies had decided was unworth the effort of attacking. It seemed that the government had come to a different conclusion. The band watched from the hills as tax collectors and their guards marched men and women into the dirt road. They were crying, sobbing. Old men prostrated themselves in the dirt. "Are we just going to watch this?" said Wei after a few moments of silence. Below then, the tax collectors had begun searching houses. A few men turned to look at him, their expressions ranging from shock to sadness to bemusement. "This isn't our fight," one said. "If we get involved, we'll be bandits?" said Wei. A few of the men broke his gaze to look at their feet. "You found me when I was cold and alone. You took me in when you could have killed me. We need to do the same for these people, or We need to do the same for these people, or all we'll ever be are some fucking cowards and government lapdogs. Animals that eat whatever scraps the government leaves behind." He was shocked at his own moral outrage. Wei waited for the men to laugh or curse at him. He expected them to expel him from the group and leave him to die on the hill. Instead, a few others began to nod. They picked up their rifles. The older man from the back cleared his throat. "I'm a lot of goddamn things, but I am not a coward. If you want to fight, let's fucking fight. A march, a battle, then an unexpected victory over the oppressors." Okay, so maybe Luhan's government is a little bit less, is going to be a little bit less successful than maybe it's been predicted by some of the people in Nanjing or Tokyo. But we'll see. Okay, consumer goods is finished. Let's follow this up with administration building level 2. As well as now we need to focus or show up our weaknesses. The bottom line. It was suffocating in the auditorium. Not so much because of the heat outside, but because of the press of bodies throughout the Communist Party of China's compound deep in the mountains. The call had gone out weeks ago that the party would be hosting a meeting, that they would be deciding a plan of action for Yunnan's peasants and the laborers to advance its plan for liberation. It fell on Huazhu, his sleeves rolled up, to deliver the plan. He stepped onto the stage and looked out into the bodies. "Comrades, you've worked hard these last few months. The fruits of your labor are self-evident in every aspect of life. Already the bosses and the landloaders are celebrating the increase in agriculture production." Hao fell silent and watched as the union leaders murmured, wiping the sweat off their brows. Beneath the pathetic whirlings of the fans, he caught scattered complaints. The oppressors had been working them ragged, and the ban on unions meant that there was no one to advocate for them. The people were chafing under the strain of the government's new regulations. "We must be patient. The committees have decided that it is not yet time to strike, even as the country grows restless. We must." Hao did not have an opportunity to finish his speech before the crowd began to roar in frustration. He gave several futile efforts to regain control before stepping aside and watching glumly and screaming and arguing consume the workers. He did not know how much longer the people could wait. The people demand action. And how are you guys looking? You guys are looking good. 4 factories, and we're very, very slowly building up our military base. And a stronghold network, I'm going to say probably is never going to get finished. Would be my hunch. But, well, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how well it can work. And again, I do want to see if we can get the NRA 40th and the NRA 24th on side when the time comes. Having some allies, I have to imagine, are going to be beneficial. The shield has been broken. So all of Africa is united under a single Reichskammer threat. But I'm pretty sure that this one under Hans Hüttig will always collapse. Like, no matter what, it'll always fail. Okay, hospital construction. Let's go for more military building construction. That also sounds very, very nice for us. You know, let's just add like 2 more divisions on this. Again, as far as I know, there's not really like a unit cap in TNO. So we might as well just like train as many men as we possibly can. Like, how long does training actually take for one of these divisions? Because right now it's January. October. That's because they need to get to 100%. Okay. Kennedy's been inaugurated President of the United States. I guess we'll draw closer to China. And shoring up our weaknesses. The boy looked young. 18, perhaps even younger. He had been a handsome thing too before Shi Qingzhen and his men had captured him. Over the course of his interrogation, Shi had watched as his soft, sensitive features vanished beneath the massive red and purple. His nose bent at a sharp, unnatural angle. He made a strange, guttural noises whenever he tried to breathe. It was a depressing sight, not one that Shi relished. But he was only doing his job as a patriotic soldier of China. The KMT needed to be stopped and its members identified. It was the only way to promote stability. The only way to keep Yunnan safe amid its isolation. She wiped the blood from his hands and knelt beside the prisoner. Listen, she said, trying to affect the reassuring tone of a kind uncle. I'm sure you're a good kid. You probably have a father, a mother, people who care about you. They wouldn't want you to throw your life away like this. He watched as a mixture of blood and tears seep from the child's face. She removed a handkerchief from his pocket and dabbed the prisoner's eyes. You can still go back home. All we need is a little information on the people who have tricked you into this. You can tell us their names, right? Where those people might be right now. Though there were more tears, trembling, the boy murmured something incoherent through his ruined, blood-filled mouth. Then, without looking at his face, he shook his head. No, I will not say anything. She continued kneeling. He brushed away the prisoner's hair and looked at him with a forlorn expression. Oh, you sweet boy, he said. You stupid, sweet boy. Art shall be continued until we have answers. And I think an answer you might be having right now is when this episode going to end. Well, I've got to tell you, it's going to be right now. So if you enjoyed, my thumbs up. Not enjoying, thumbs down. You want to see more, subscribe, and goodbye.